and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 208, and today's date is November 6, 2013. And the title of this episode is I Command You, the Economy is Recovering. And we are going to get right into the economic collapse news. And what are we seeing? Well, in Germany, the number 2 utility will be cutting 2,500 jobs. Yes, the unemployment rate will be rising in Germany just like it's rising in the Eurozone. And we are seeing that in the UK, BAE Systems, they are the shipbuilding company that works out of Portsmouth in England, is laying off 1,775 ship workers. The shipbuilding company has been building ships for over 500 years, and there's going to be a lot more people out of work in England. And in other places, and of course, we are seeing layoffs happen everywhere. I mean, in my other reports, I've said that the financial industry with the mortgage companies have laid off around 49,000 people since the beginning of the year. Yesterday I went over the tech companies, and Societe Generale is laying off another 375 people. Acer is laying off about 455 people, and Canacorp is laying off about 1,000 people. And Blockbuster right now, it looks like they're closing the rest of their stores, and their Blockbuster storefronts will no longer exist. At one time, Blockbuster had a total of 9,000 stores. All of them are going to be gone. I mean, at this point, they only have 300 left, and this is the last 300 that they are closing, and now you will no longer see Blockbuster storefronts anymore. So all those people will be out of work, and more commercial real estate on the market that will not get leased, because I know by me, the Blockbuster that went out, that space is still for lease. And in that plaza, a lot of the stores are completely empty. So I know we've had the propaganda in Europe telling us that everything is better, things are looking great, and then of course we see the numbers of unemployment, and they're actually the opposite of what they were reporting. They were reporting 12%, but they're really 12.2%, so that's completely opposite of what they were talking about. And we are seeing that the Eurozone, in September now, their retail sales have fallen more than they expected they were going to fall. Well, of course, if there are so many people out of work or underemployed, retail sales are not going to do well. And I don't know why they just can't understand this. If you take a community in a town and you take half of them and they're out of work, or take a quarter and they're out of work and the other quarter are underemployed, guess what's going to happen to the businesses in that town? They're going to suffer. It's very simple. So what they thought was going to happen is they thought it was only going to have a decline of about 0.4%, but it dropped around 0.6%, and this was a lot more than they expected, and this includes both food and non-food products. So it looks like they're having a very tough time. And we have to understand, throughout the Eurozone, there are 19 million people out of work right now. So this is going to translate into weak consumer spending because they just don't have the money. So it ripples up the chain. It's almost like real estate. When new home builders were buying carpets, they were buying flooring, they were buying lumber, sheetrock, all this stuff. When the housing boom ended, it was a ripple effect. Everyone that had to do with that house took a hit. The same thing is happening now. You depend on the middle class and the people to keep these retail businesses going. If you do not have the middle class, and if these people are not working and making a good salary, they're not going out there to purchase goods. What they do is they keep their cash, and instead of Instead of buying things that they want, they only buy things that they actually need, like food. They pay their rent. They pay the electric to keep the lights on. And guess what? That extra pair of pants, that extra DVD player, or that the VCR, they don't even exist anymore. Uh, the extra, sound system or iPhone or iPod. Guess what? People are just not going to purchase those because they don't have the money. So what do people do? They reprioritize their lives. They only purchase the things they actually need. And this is why we are seeing retail sales decline the way they are. This is why we see stores closing. This is why they are talking about a horrific holiday season. And if we look over at the real estate market, this is a good indicator that the economy is not doing well. We understand real estate is in a bubble right now. And in October, it looks like the mortgage purchase applications have collapsed to a decade low right now. And they're dropping to their lowest since Christmas of 2012 and the lowest since February of 2012. So we have to look back. How could this possibly be? The government is telling us that unemployment is continually dropping. We're at 7.2%, and back in 2012, it was above 7.2%. So there are more people working. Doesn't make sense. But again, the unemployment numbers do not count the quality of work. They do not count if the person is employed in a temp position or in a full-time position. These two are very different. Because when a person is laid off from a full-time position, let's just say they're making $70,000, and now they have two temp jobs that make $45,000 combined. Guess what? They can't purchase a home. They can't purchase a car. It makes it much more difficult. They stop spending. So this is what we are seeing, and we're seeing these mortgage applications start to die down at this point because the numbers of unemployment and underemployment are much, much higher. And what are we seeing? We are seeing most of the purchases of homes are in cash. And right now, Fitch warns of a housing bubble. I know this should not come as a surprise to anyone out there. And what they are saying, it is unsustainable. It cannot be maintained. The home prices are 17% overvalued at this time. And Fitch goes on to say, the extreme rate of home price growth is a cause for caution. The unprecedented home price growth should be paired with economic health that is similarly unprecedented, the evidence for which is lacking in this case. Affordability is strained. A high rate of home price growth is not considered to be sustainable. Approximately 17% overvalued in real terms, with individual geographic regions varying widely. Based on the historic relationship between home price levels and the primary drivers of supply and demand in the market, there is a misalignment, and we understand that. Fitch says a bubble risk in continuing price rises and sees several factors which could halt or even reverse recent gains in the market. And what they are seeing right now is the default risk of loan originated today is 14% higher than the 1990s average. And this is not looking good for the housing market, because what do we understand is that most of these hedge funds, most of these investment companies right now are trying to get out of the housing market. They purchased it, they blew the prices up, and they are trying to get out of the market. And the Fitch goes on to say, and these are things we already know, housing prices are being driven up more through speculative buying than from an increasing base demand. And I've discussed this many, many times. The normal, everyday American is not out there purchasing homes. How can they be when the real unemployment is around 24%, when the Fed is still purchasing $40 to $45 billion worth of toxic real estate from the banks, when the banks have a shadow inventory and they are not letting the homes hit the market, because if they do, it would completely collapse the market at this time. So we are definitely seeing the housing market continually implode on itself. And eventually, we will wake up one day and we will read the headlines: housing market collapses, just like we saw in 2008. Everyone thought everything was fine. The propaganda was going on, except for those people who were trying to sell their homes. They realized that there was something wrong, but most other people still had their jobs. No one really noticed anything until one day we woke up. We saw people with boxes walking out of Lehman. Lehman was done. The stock market started to dip, take a dive. They were telling us that housing is being hit hard. And from that point on, the whole entire thing started to fall apart. And what are we seeing now? Well, we are seeing that China is continually making deals all around the world. And what's happening is deals from London to Singapore. China is seeking a greater role for its yuan currency in global markets to challenge the dollar. What they are doing, they are setting up a new free trade zone, and it is free convertibility of the yuan, an unprecedented change which would allow greater use of China's currency. So they are pushing this out there. They are taking the next step, because we understand that Kenya has become the clearinghouse for China, for the African nations, which will bypass the dollar. They did a yuan swap in England, which bypassed the dollar. Many places are starting to look at the yuan and starting to set up systems that they will be able to deal with the yuan. And we have to remember, for decades, the U.S. has been benefiting to the tune of trillions of dollars worth of free credit from the greenback's role as the default global reserve unit. And now China, which has the world's biggest foreign exchange reserves, the immediate appeal of greater role of the yuan is lubricating trade flows and drawing foreign investors and investment companies. And what has happened now, the yuan currency trading volumes more than doubled between January 2012 and August of this year. So we can see the increased demand for the yuan. And Merck Investments in California said it's adding as much as it can of offshore yuan to its $450 million of funds. Union Bank, a unit of Bank of Tokyo, is pushing wealthy clients to diversify their savings into the yuan deposits. The CME Group, the largest future exchange, began offering trading in offshore yuan derivatives in February. So we can see where this is headed. And we understand that the U.S. dollar is completely trying to stay above water right now. The U.S., the Empire of the United States, and the central bankers are trying to maintain control in the Middle East. Their plan was to get into to Iran and Syria and to convert them over to the U.S. dollar and have them sell their natural resources using the U.S. dollar, and implement a private Western central bank so they can loan all the people money with interest attached to that, so they can go into debt like all the other countries. But this plan is still in place, and this is still going forward, even though they will eventually not make this happen because it will lead to war instead. They are trying to maintain control of all the Middle Eastern nations, because I've said this in many, many other reports. When these countries decide that the U.S. dollar is no longer the reserve currency and they're looking towards the yuan or any other currency, they will start sending back the U.S. dollars because they will not need them anymore. They will not need the treasury bonds anymore, and all of that will flow back to the U.S. And there could be one small instance that this happens that sets the entire thing off, and all of a sudden you go to sleep one night, you wake up the next morning, it's all over the news. Nobody knows what's going on except for all of us that have been listening. Real estate markets crashing. The dollar is collapsing. I don't know if you've seen the movie Rollover, but it's the same type of scenario where all the U.S. dollars, they were just dumping them, and the markets came crashing down. And this was brought on by Saudi Arabia at the time. And what do we know right now? Saudi Arabia is looking for alternatives right now and trying to position themselves and protect themselves when the U.S. dollar collapses. And you can kind of compare this to Goldman Sachs, that when they were selling these subprime securities, they were betting against them, but they were telling the investors that they're really great investments. So Saudi Arabia is doing the same thing. They're trying to keep the dollar propped up by supplying the rebels, the paid mercenaries in Syria with weapons, and trying to get Assad out of the government and trying to put a puppet government in there, trying to get into Iran, and they're also hedging their bet by making deals with China just in case that plan does not work. Okay, let's move on here. Now, because of the laws in New York that were signed called the SAFE Act, and this is the gun laws, which only allowed a certain number of bullets in a magazine. Many of the gun and ammunition manufacturers have been moving out of New York right now. 3 gun companies have announced plans to leave the state, and they are going to get out because they said they do not like the laws and what is happening, and the state is completely not for the Second Amendment. They are against the Second Amendment, so they are looking to leave, and this is going to be a huge monetary hit within the New York area. Now, on another note, we see that the Senate committee approved the NSA funding, and Congress has taken the first step towards expanding the abilities of the United States intelligence community by advancing a bill that will ensure the government's spy budget stays intact into the next year. And what do we know about this? Well, we understand they are not going to stop spying on everyone. They are going to continue and increase the amount of spying because we absolutely for sure know that the economic collapse is coming. They know this. They need to keep tabs on everything. They need to know what is going on in other countries, and especially here in the U.S., because any threat to their power, that threat will be removed, and we will definitely see DHS, TSA, all come down on the people when the time is right. And some people will be taken off to FEMA camps, and other people will just be removed completely and never seen again, because they do not want these people rising up and overthrowing the power that they have. And the central bankers will never let that happen. They will rather kill you than get thrown out and removed from power. And speaking about FEMA camps, what we're seeing right now is that cities, and you've probably been reading about this, are getting rid of their homeless people. Why are they doing this? Why don't they want you to see the homeless? Because when you see the homeless, it reminds you of the Great Depression. And when you see more and more tent cities, or you see more people living on the streets, people start asking questions about the economy. What is going on here? Why do we have so many people? They don't want you to see this. And this is the first step of controlling the population. So what is happening? Well, in South Carolina, they are making it legal to get rid of the homeless problem. So what are they doing with these homeless people? Well, here is the first stage of the FEMA camps. People are now given a choice if you are homeless. You can either report to the FEMA camp or go to jail, which I believe is pretty much the same thing. at this point. So these FEMA camps are, they're 24-hour. They have razor wire uh, on top of the fences facing in, and of course these were supposed to be used to help disaster victims. But why would you have barbed wire facing in and not out? And why would you need to keep people caged up? It makes no sense. But what we can see is that these are meant to keep people from causing problems and to control the masses any way they can. And here is the first step. They are now in South Carolina sending their people to the FEMA camps. Boston is moving its homeless out of the city into what they call home base near Salem, which is pretty much almost like a FEMA camp. People in South California are getting concerned from homeless disappearing off the streets and they don't know where they're going. Well, we can only surmise that these people are also headed to some type of FEMA camp, and this is step one. Most of the people don't care about the homeless. I mean, I know there are people that do, but most of the people don't even notice. What? There were homeless people here? They were already sent off to the FEMA camps. Phase one. Phase two, guess what? It's going to be everyone else. When everything starts to fall apart, you will see DHS, other armed forces, troops that you don't recognize come into the streets, and you're not going to understand what is going on. And I remember there was a video of a police captain or a police chief talking about the red, the blue circles on streets or on mailboxes, and what he was saying was these are indicators of who are they going to execute right on the spot and who are the people that they are going to take away into these FEMA camps. And I think people with the red circle or the red X are the ones they execute, and the ones with the blue are the ones that are either taken away or left alone at this time. So we can see that stage one is now commencing. They are starting to move homeless people, which people really don't realize what is happening because they don't pay attention, and these people are now being removed into FEMA camps. Okay, now we're seeing a lot of propaganda out there about North Korea. And I understand, and everyone's out there, publishing it out there saying, oh, North Korea is creating a ballistic, intercontinental ballistic missile that can hit the country. It will be able to fly 6,000 miles. They can put a nuke on top of it. They can put a EMP type of weapon on top of there. They're, purchasing technology from Russia to create this EMP. But then we have to delve in and we have to understand why this propaganda is actually happening at this time, because there is always a reason why the U.S. government creates this propaganda. It's not just because, oh, North Korea is evil and we have to all be afraid. No. What they are doing right now, North Korea, and I've mentioned this, I believe, in a couple of reports back, is making efforts to expand the Trans-Korean economic cooperation with Russia. They are building a railway project linking Russia eastern border to North Korea. They are also going to connect a gas pipeline from Russia. And guess what? It's going to bypass the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. They're not even going to use it. But what other reason? That's one reason. So they started the propaganda up. The last time we heard the propaganda with North Korea, guess what they were doing? They were making a deal with Iran to purchase their oil bypassing the dollar. But what else are they doing at this time? Well, I've said this in my other reports that in the Pacific, they are encircling China. Okay? So now, on the other side of China, they want to set up bases and encircle them in this way. And they are using the threat of North Korea to set up more missiles and more military bases around the area, saying that North Korea is a threat, so we need to bring in more missiles. We need to we need to set up more bases, and they are going to try to complete the circle around China. And this is another reason they are doing this. It's always something, it's always when you hear government officials and the propaganda from the corporate media, which is controlled by the government, it is always the opposite of what they're talking about. It's always shrouded in shadows and mystery, and they're really not telling you the truth. They're trying to demonize another nation, to move military assets, to move and to stop uh, the country from doing something the central bankers do not like. And this is why you see this type of action happening at this time. And they will use these threats and from North Korea and from Iran and from Syria to set up different false flags to push their agenda forward. And this is why you see this happening right now. Now, I told you in my other reports that Israel is trying to provoke Syria. Well, the United States and Turkey, NATO, are holding Eastern Mediterranean drills from November 4th to the 14th. And it looks like it is a clear act to provoke Syria in some way. Putting all, they're having war games out there, and what they're doing is they're having various type of naval operations, and they're having many different drills that are going on, and it's right outside of Syria that they are doing this. So we have Israel bombing Syria, just flying in, bombing a military base that they believe there's some type of missiles in there. We're seeing right now that NATO, the U.S., Turkey are having military drills right outside of Syria, and this is all to provoke Syria into doing something. Now, Saudi Arabia, is doing everything they can to disrupt any peaceful solution with Syria. They do not want peace. Neither does the U.S. government, central bankers, Israel. No peace here. Even though the U.S. government is pretending and creating that illusion that they're going along with Russia and Syria with the chemical weapons, and we just want peace with Iran with their nuclear weapons. They do not want this at all. This is an illusion to make the world believe their good intentions are for peace, but it is not. And right now, Saudi Arabia is, trying to sabotage and do everything they can. They're increasing the amount of weapons that they're giving the paid mercenaries to fight Assad. But again, a lot of that is not working. Assad is winning. The U.S., Susan Rice, John Kerry have been out there saying that Assad must go and the puppet government in Iran must go, and this is all they see. They do not see anything else. And what is happening right now, and yesterday I did say there's going to be some type of false flag event here on American soil, and I did mention that maybe it won't be chemical because they're disarming all the chemical weapons in Syria, but it could be from Iran, that they might say, oh yeah, the chemical weapons came from Iran. But now I do believe the false flag event could be biological, chemical, or nuclear, and the reason why I say that is because now, lo and behold, CNN reports the United States is looking at new classified intelligence indicating the Syrian government may not fully declare its chemical weapons stockpile. CNN has learned that Assad might have a secret cache of chemical weapons even after the current agreed upon destruction effort is carried out. So they are already creating the propaganda for the reason they need to go into Syria. And what I can see happening right now is CNN is reporting this. They believe, Assad is hiding, took some of the chemical weapons out and hid them. I can see that they laid the foundation right now for a false flag event. These hidden chemical weapons now can be used in the United States as a false flag to get the war started with Syria. It is absolutely perfect of what they're doing to get this false flag event to work out for them. So, what can we expect? I've said in the past that from now until the debt ceiling, which is February, they're going to need to do something. They understand that the economy is slowing, it's declining. They tried to blame it on the government shutdown. That didn't really go over that big. They really wanted that event that was going to happen in Syria with the war. That didn't go over big. And now here they are laying the groundwork for a false flag. They already have out there that they have the secret intelligence, and they are definitely going to push this forward. We are definitely going to see a cyber attack coupled with probably a chemical attack, coupled with a nuclear attack, and this will set the stage for war with Iran and Syria. And to really bring this home, I've said this in the past, they will need to do this in more than one place in the United States. They will have to hit power grids. They will have to hit the banks, the stock exchange, the NASDAQ. Well, we've been seeing a lot of glitches in the NASDAQ. They will have to have the chemical weapons dispersed in a populated area, in a city type of setting. We can see what they are planning. We saw 9/11, that there were planes in Washington, there were planes in New York, in Pennsylvania, and of course afterwards they shown that planes were supposed to be in many other places. Well, this is going to be that same type of scenario. Banks will be on bank holiday. They will be shut down. The exchange will be shut down because of cyber attacks. Cyber attacks might even hit the power grid, or there might be a nuclear explosion at a power grid. We will see chemical weapons being used in various parts of the country. We will see all of this happen all at once to get the war started. Okay, let's move on now. Walmart, for some reason, was hit by some type of cyber attack. They were saying, that it was a glitch, a technical glitch, but all of a sudden, products on the Walmart site, like kayaks, were selling for $11, computer monitors were selling for $9, and people ran to the website and started purchasing this stuff. And right now they've taken down all online sales of Walmart, and nobody can purchase anything online at this time. And I don't know if this was a cyber attack or if this was a true glitch, but it's just something funny that happened, and people were able to get products for a lot less than what they would normally sell for. But in China, what is happening now, there's a security review commission called the U.S.-China Economic Security Review Commission that came out and said that they created this report that says Chinese government is engaged in a concerted campaign of cyber attacks on the United States. The Chinese government is directing and executing a large-scale cyber espionage campaign against the United States, and to date has successfully targeted the networks of U.S. government and private organizations, including those of the Department of Defense, private firms, banks, and stock exchange. And we can see what is going on right now. They are encircling China, using a lot of propaganda with North Korea. They are building the propaganda that the Chinese are hitting the United States with cyber attacks, and they've created this whole review security commission to report on this, and they are definitely getting ready for war with China eventually. And this is all building and laying the foundation for what is coming. So what does the U.S. government want to do? Since they've realized that China has been attacking the Department of Defense and private firms, the U.S. government, to counter this, wants to impose sanctions on China because of the cyber attacks. And what this legislation will do, it would allow U.S. companies to conduct uh, certain things that U.S. companies will not be able to do. I'm sorry, with China, they will block imports of Chinese goods. They will ban Chinese firms that use stolen U.S. data. They're going to block travel to the United States by officials linked to cyber attacks. So we can see what is happening at this time. They want to implement sanctions against China. Well, could this be because the yuan, the Chinese, are making deals all over the place and they're slated to be the next reserve currency? Could it be that the U.S. government is looking and setting the stage for war with China? All of this seems to be coming true at this time. We can see the false flag events going to happen eventually here in the U.S. to get us into war with Syria and Iran. And guess who's going to come to their aid? Well, Russia and China, because they already said they were going to do this. And once they come to the aid, guess what happens? War breaks out. And we are definitely seeing this happen at this time. And just going on with cyber attacks, the Department of Homeland Security right now is saying that if a cyber attack happens here, they are warning the NSA that they have no way to share the alerts about what is happening right now because their systems do not talk to each other. So again, they are setting the stage for some type of cyber attack, false flag, and this will be coupled with other things that are going to happen. And what they're saying is that if something comes in and it's hit, they have no way of communicating with other branches of the government because their systems are just not interconnected, and it just does not work like that at this time. So their warnings and their alerts will not be able to work at this time. So they need to work on that before the actual false flag event, which you know they're not going to. They're going to let the false flag event happen. The DHS will have no idea what is happening. Of course, they do know what's happening because they know the government is preparing all this. Just like the Boston bombing, they had no clue what was going on. If you ever look at the DHS website, their alert system just never works. But you can tell that they are setting the stage and preparing for something to happen. Okay, now Obama has created new executive orders for the Climate Task Force, and this whole global warming is completely fake and phony. It is not real. Right now, the Earth is in a cooling period, and the reason why they are trying to push the Climate Preparedness and Resilience Executive Order through, and there's a couple reasons. One, they want to put a carbon tax and tax the people even more. They want to tax mileage. They want to tax rainfall. They want to tax your carbon footprint. Why do they want to do this? Well, I've said this before. When countries are at the end game, they need to raise revenue because they have so much debt they cannot sustain this. So what they end up doing is they continually add taxes and try to get the people to pay for everything that is going on. That's why the government right now is implementing FACTA. This is why they are going across to every other country looking for money. And if you have a dual citizenship with a dual passport and you work outside the country, they want part of your taxes. They want to tax part of your money because they are looking for revenue. If you decide you want to get rid of your passport and renounce your citizenship to the United States, there's legislation and bills out there that they want to take 30% of your wealth to allow you to leave the United States at this time because they are doing everything to build revenue because they understand the amount of people who are working right now. It is not enough to maintain the government spending, and they're putting on so much debt right now, it's getting further and further apart. But back to the executive order here, And Obama right now is, he's just using the executive orders to circumvent Congress, in addition to bestowing unconstitutional powers on executive agencies under his control. The president's climate action plan. The action plan calls for more free trade treaties and agreements through the World Trade Organization that forces governments and businesses to comply with legally binding regulations, which is the opposite of free trade. His action plan intends to push drought resistant seeds. So he wants to take these GMO seeds and push this across the world. Obama is promoting worldwide expansion of nuclear power because the carbon emissions are low, but as we know, nuclear power is exceptionally dangerous compared to everything else that we use. And if we just look at Chernobyl and we look at Japan, we do not want to be pushing nuclear power across the world. And this is all meant to grab money from the people, and they will turn this into taxing the people. If you hear Al Gore and you hear other people, this is their agenda, to put a carbon tax on everyone. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.